good, Nathan. How you doing?
I'm doing very good. This is now our third take to try to get this started. So I'm just going to put that out there. We are not professionals in any sense of the word.
Yeah. Jack's
Good to hear you again. No trades at all. No trades. Just Jack.
No Jacks.
That was definitely a dad joke. Anyway, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about the decline of religion, specifically Christianity, but just religion in general.
Yeah. Good.
And
it's important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a topic that I believe is close to everyone's hearts, and it's something to consider the implications of. I think even if you're not religious, I think it's important to understand why it's happening and just see the numbers. So
yeah,
I believe, Nathan, you got some of these numbers for us.
Yeah, I mean, I went on the old internets and found a couple numbers, but the thing about this whole thing is that it's really easy to find. None of this information is secret. This has been known for a long time that religion's been in decline. And so that's actually what this whole thing is today. We thought we'd have a conversation and kind of give our opinion on why this is happening and maybe talk about our own experiences. But a Gallup poll that I pulled from 2021 said that in 2020, 47% of people claim to belong to a church, a synagogue, or a temple, or a mosque, some place of worship. And in 2018, that number was 50%. In 1999, that number was 70%. And then in 1937, which is a big jump, that number was 73%. And I actually remember reading since 1937 on till about like 1970 or so, it was around 73%. So there's a sharp decline at some point, and which is really interesting. So the attendees, at least to religious organizations, have dropped. Another kind of a correlative research from Pew Research Center, which is an excellent website to go to. Anyone who wants to look at actual good statistics, go to Pew Research Center. But they said, so a 2019 poll found that in 2018 to 2019, 65% of Americans claim to be Christian, which is 12 percent points down from the previous decade. And the same year, 26% said that they are either atheists, agnostic, or nuns, or nothing to do with religion. That number in 2009, though, was 17%. So there was 17% in 2009 of atheists, agnostics, and nuns. But that number jumped pretty quickly in just 10 years. So obviously there is a rise of atheists or non-religious people, and at the same time a decline, which I guess has to be that way. If you're going to decline in religion, there's got to be to non-religious things. So we're here to talk about what the heck that's all about and why that's important, because I really do think if you are born anywhere in the world at all, you were affected by one religion or another. And it has always been a long debate. Is religion good? Is it useful? Is it a good thing that religion's in decline? Or is this something we need to maybe find, even if you're not religious, maybe find an alternative? Or is this just purely bad and we all need to be Christians? So I know many people on that last point who would agree with that one.
Yeah.
But I thought before we go into that, how about we talk about kind of our religious background? I know you and I both grew up in the church, but I'm curious to kind of hear you map out your religious background.
Yeah, for sure. Well, born, raised in a Christian home. With my family, we jumped around from church to church. So typically when I have this conversation, I refer to mostly being Baptist, but really non-denominational. We attended Presbyterian, Baptist churches, non-denominational churches. So I think we always just looked for a church home and never really found it. Then in growing up, it was interesting to see these different perspectives in each of these churches. Some emphasize different books a little bit more than others. I mean, went to the churches that were all fire and brimstone, and then the next week we're going to the only the gospel churches. So I got to see a lot of it, a lot of different sides of it, and studied very differently in comparison to a lot of my friends who, found or their family were in a church home and really just got to emphasize what their perspective by going to the same church throughout their childhood and into adulthood. So, and then also me being the type of person that I am, I have a tendency to question, a tendency to wonder and be curious about like whatever it is that somebody might be telling me, or so the claims that somebody makes, even as a kid. So there was a revelation, really, I guess, of like that doesn't these things are incoherent. Why are they incoherent? So
Yeah.
that was always kind of my perspective growing up, and then I had my own experiences of what I now call like divinity, a divine experience. Although, it's a little bit less of an experience with what I would call it's not so much an experience with a creator as much as it is wholeness and connectivity, lack of separation. Um, so it's kind of also hard to term it as a divine experience just because of that. But growing up, I'd have these experiences, but I would attribute them to Christianity because that's the context in which that's the lens through which I saw, and that's how I saw the world. And it wasn't until probably about 21 that I started a deconstruction of my beliefs because of an exposure to different information, an exposure to different people who I was also led to believe are evil, and all of them are evil, and all of them have this opinion, and all of them think that you should be dead because you are a Christian, or whatever else. I hold a certain identity. Doesn't really matter, but it just wasn't the case. It wasn't the case that these people wanted to hurt me or thought ill of me, or had the
What people
point
are
of
you talking
view.
about?
Well, I mean, it ranges from anywhere from Muslims to atheists to Buddhists, and I mean, and then even coming to the understanding that a lot of people will see Buddhism and these other Eastern philosophies as religion, and a lot of practitioners of them don't hold it as such. So there's just all these misconceptions about like what is out there, the other truths, and that people hold close to their heart.
Yeah.
And I couldn't accept. What is? How do I phrase it? I came up with this thought of I don't want to be so indoctrinated into anything that I'm blind to everything else. And so
That's right.
that
Yeah.
became kind of the mantra of how I deconstructed and why I deconstructed, is I was tired of being, for one thing, fearful. Like I said, I experienced a lot of that fire and brimstone preaching. So end of times was a very relevant topic in at least my environment. And you begin to lose your future a little bit with that conversation. You develop a little bit of anxiety about what's going to come, and eventually are subconsciously convinced that nothing's coming at all. Like nothing is, like you don't have a future. So I don't know. I think I got to a point of rejecting that specifically, and then that just domino affected into the next thing. Like what else? What else is wrong? What else? Well, what else do I believe is wrong? What else is incoherent in this system? So
So
that's
when was like the kind of point for you? Do you remember specifically when you were like, "Wow, I'm not a Christian anymore"?
well, I actually okay. So I had a kind of this conversation with somebody. I mean, he what do you call it? He's an evangelist recently. So he was preaching the gospel, and I mean, but the conversation started with, "Are you a follower of Christ?"
Right.
And I was like, "Why would you word it? Why would you word it that way?" It's like, well, I'm not anti Christian, I just don't consider myself a Christian. But there's a lot of things that I agree with, uh, that I hold still close to my heart, that Jesus talks about.
We'll get
And
into that. Yeah,
yeah,
we'll definitely get into that. Yeah.
and so that didn't make sense to this guy, but because if you're a follower of Christ, you're Christian. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't
Right.
think so, not necessarily, because I hold a lot of other beliefs. Well, Christians hold a lot of other beliefs that I don't hold, like things about like the afterlife and things
Yeah.
of that nature. So it's a little gray as to where I was finally like, oh, I'm not Christian. I don't think I'm Christian. And I think you had a little bit to do with that, with our conversations leading to that point of, we're talking about all these things, and I'm talking about my beliefs, and I'm like, this is still Christianity, and you're like, well, I mean, you're talking about it, and it doesn't really seem like it is Christianity. Like, you might agree with a lot of certain things in Christianity, but it doesn't sound like you are spreading that same message or
Right.
holding those same beliefs. So yeah, I think some of our conversations opened my eyes to like what I believe. I mean, I guess I knew what I believed. I just didn't. I still attributed it to Christianity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I almost
so
feel like I was present for that experience you had, because when I met you, we were in college, and we were Spanish partners, and then we would go out to Mean Greens, the vegan
yeah,
thing, and we'd have those conversations. Oh, but no, we would be studying Spanish, but then have conversations about Christianity and the nature of reality and all that. That was so fun. But I
yeah,
remember you being like telling me your stories, and then that happened, and then the conversation always shifted to, kind of a rejection of Christianity after that. Not a rejection, but I don't think this is what I'm talking about. Interesting. That's a really cool background. I had a very similar background. I come from a family of missionaries. Like, my mother was born in Africa, in Liberia, and she lived there till she was 18 and moved here after that. My uncle was born in New Guinea, and both sides of my family were or still are, very, very serious Christians. So growing up, it was church every Sunday. We did Awanas. I don't know if you know what that was. You ever did Awanas?
no, what was that?
It's like Vacation Bible School, or it's like learning the Bible.
Yeah,
It's like a camp. It's basically so parents have a daycare, so they can go off and do whatever they want, and then have their kids with safe people. But well, anyway, so yeah, I did the whole thing for forever, and then what was it? I think around 14, 15, I started listening to Blink 182, and became very, very rebellious. So I kind of left the church. I kind of left Christianity out of an act of rebellion, not for any good reason, just because I'm like, well, I don't care. I'm going to do something different. Screw the authority. And then I became a devout Rastafarian. Did you know? Yeah, you knew me when I had dreadlocks, right?
no, I don't think you had them
Oh, I
when.
cut them before. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think you had them when.
Well, I'll show a picture on
Yeah,
here.
it'll be the
But
cover photo.
yeah,
The
the
thumbnail.
thumbnail. like, who's this dude with dreads? Oh no, I'd probably get canceled.
Right.
It's a big cultural appropriation.
Oh, true, true.
But yeah, so I became a really devout Rastafarian for a long time when I was 16 after hearing the beautiful voice of Bob Marley. And but still had to go to church, and I still went to, like, I did mission trips too. I went to the Dominican Republic when I was a Rasta, and I remember being there and like praying, but like praying to Rastafari, not Jesus, and stuff like that. So, but and then I ran into Alan Watts and philosophy and critical thinking and logic, and then Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and all these people who were atheists and found really good reasons not to believe, and basically reasoned my way out of it. And yeah, that's kind of the short version. Stopped going to church when I moved out. I had to still go to church until I was 21. So yeah. Anyway, that's the short and sweet answer. But my whole family is 100% Christian, except my father. He wasn't Christian. He was the one. Me, my dad, and my sister were the three atheists in the whole family, and that's still true today. I don't know any other atheists in our family, but by atheist, I don't mean like the militant type, like Christianity or religion is stupid. I just mean that I think by that I mean specifically, I think naturalism better explains reality than supernaturalism. Basically, it's just that simple. I just think that the evidence is there, but we can get into that in a second. So that's my background. Oh, that was short and sweet. So we both come from very damaged Christian homes. It's a joke.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think we talked about some of the whys before getting into this. One of like the potential whys as to this decline, just because you said these broken Christian homes, it is this trending topic of religious trauma. And so I mean, I don't know if you've seen much of that on any of your outlets, but
Of course.
it's a very, I mean, to me, in appearance, I don't know any numbers, but I see it a lot, is people referring to this thing that they're working through, and the shame that comes with it, and all
Right.
of the
Yeah,
like I
no,
said,
I
trauma.
mean, yeah. And it's saying, it seems to be coming to light a lot more, like people with, because now that homosexuality is becoming more well, basically is norm now, except with many Christian, even in Christianity, it's becoming accepted in the church as homosexuality, but for the longest time it just absolutely wasn't. And a lot of churches, actually most churches and most Christians don't accept, I think, homosexuality. But people who are born that way, and then they're told, oh, you can just pray the gay away, or that this is a sinful nature in you, this is, God made you this way, but that you should pray and get rid of it, or this is just Satan affecting you, and it's just horrible stuff, and it has no grounding in logic, and it's simply belief. It's simply because our book says so. And and that's unfortunate, and that leads to a lot of trauma for people, homosexuals. But even, I mean, even like girls having to conform to certain methods, like being completely obedient to their husbands, and other things like that. It could be very traumatic. I don't know, what are some of the traumatic things you've heard?
Well, it's more from some of the things that I've seen. It's more about like manipulation, and this cult-like behavior to get somebody to do exactly what you want them to. And I don't think a lot of it is intentional. I don't think people are anybody's trying. Well, I say that I'm sure there are some people out there, but I don't think generally anyone's trying to hurt another person and cause any sort of trauma. But I think it's kind of this deeply ingrained thing in especially Christianity to subconsciously just feel so much shame and begin to feel just out of control and that there's no hope for you. And although they're preaching this message of salvation, they're not showing it. So
Well, they're preaching a message of like, judge not, judge not before you judge yourself. Yet there's an instant kind of reactive nature to Christian. Well, and this isn't all Christians, but from like the Christianity I have been around, is a very like when they see something like I remember family members being really frustrated that on The Amazing Race there was the homosexual couple that were there, and they're like, oh, they're just trying to implement that into our culture,
yeah.
or like just little things like, oh, well, they had sex before marriage because, that's bad.
Yeah.
Now there are other good reasons to not have sex before marriage, but when you have it totally based on a religious view, it's so damaging to people because you don't. It's like, well, why not? Well, because God says so.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not a very good answer. And so to me, it seems like the decline of religion is really, people are just kind of tired of this all-seeing eye that is watching you even when you're trying to take a crap.
Yep.
There's just no privacy. One of my favorite lines from Christopher Hitchens, he's like, God, the whole Christian kind of framework feels a lot like North Korea. Like God is this, even though he may do immoral things like drown millions of babies in a global flood who are probably innocent, or order bears to kill a bunch of children because they made fun of a bald guy in Second Kings somewhere, and just weird moral things like,
Yeah.
but kind of like North Korea, they have like, and you can't get out of it. But at least in North Korea, you can freaking die to get out of it. But in Christianity, you can't even die. When you die, you got to face whether or not you believed or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's. I think people are just tired of that framework, and that
Yeah.
it doesn't really work for. Well, first, it doesn't really map onto reality, and second, it just doesn't really work for just well-being in general. It does for a little bit, though, if you really get with the game. If you really convince yourself over and over and over again that this is the truth, then it really does work. And we can talk about that in a second, the good of religion. But yeah, and I think another reason too, not to keep going, I know I'm giving you up, but is of course the rise of science and secularism.
I was going to say evidence.
That to me is just the clearest evidence. Like we value, I think we're in a dip right now personally about the value of evidence and reason, and like having good reasons for you believe.
Yeah.
But basically, I mean, since the 50s, I would say like up to 1950, it's been in a decline. But logic and reason have been like paramount. And because you can't argue with what science has done, you just can't argue with what this way of thinking does for the world. You have, it's so evident. The reason we're even having this interface right now is simply because somebody was critically thinking. They realized, if people were just going to believe in things, we would never have the germ theory of disease, because it would just be, oh, it's just demons doing it. Oh, it's just, like the Chinese thought night was the dragon eating the sun, and then got too hot and let go of it. So, I just think that is undeniable in our culture. And that has been, and science has gained a lot of traction for being really paramount. So like even today, a lot of Christians they defend Christianity, and they try to utilize the trappings of science to defend their position. And, so anyway,
Well, they think they're compatible, and I was gonna say people do. It's crazy how people do argue with the evidence. What is evident, So that was one of the reasons that I put was the emphasis on what is evident and people becoming more secular.
Right.
I mean, it should open up doors of question, doors of and it's not to me, it's not really about deconverting anybody. It's about,
No.
are you thinking? Like, can you accept a new
Right.
truth? If there is truth and we can find it and we can get closer to it, can you accept it? And if not, I mean, that's what I'm saying with, like, I don't want to be so indoctrinated into anything that I am blind to everything else.
Right.
And that has really everything to do with, I want to follow truth wherever it leads me. And
Right. I agree. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
and
like it's really the motivation is what is true,
yeah,
not what would I rather be true.
exactly.
Like what is true regardless of my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. It has to be separated from my emotions, from my identity. And that's part of uh, the difficult part of the deconstruction is there's so much identity tied to it. Honestly, I think that there would be more of a decline had there, ha, if there was people more well adjusted to dying to an identity. Like if that was practiced more, like meditation, if meditation was practiced more, you would see that you're not your roles. You would see that you're not your beliefs. You would see that you're not these things. And I think that kind of gets in the way of, well, not gets in the way, but I think there'd be more of a decline if people were more inclined to do that, but they're not.
Well, it's really scary.
Yeah,
Like I bet if people heard that what you just said, they would immediately be reminded of fear. Like, what do you
yeah,
mean get rid of my identity? What are you talking about?
hmm,
Especially today in our culture, everything is about identity.
hmm,
Everything is about where you came from, what kind of skin color you have, and what kind of power do you hold in this society.
hmm,
Everything is about that. It's all about identity. So to even suggest, so which is interesting though, that there's still a decline of religion, even though this identity in this social media age and like individualism has increased. Probably,
yeah,
I'm assuming.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting though. I do you think that well, how much of a role do you think identity plays in people's? So there's a website
Hmm.
that I can't remember what it is, but it's for pastors who lost their belief but can't come out to their congregation because they would lose their
Ooh,
jobs and they would it's called oh, I hate not knowing it. It's something. If I find it, I'll put it in the link in the description.
yeah.
Yeah. But it's like so people who like church leaders and stuff like that who have lost their faith and don't know who to talk to. So it's like an online forum to other pastors who have had the same thing,
Hmm.
other religious people who are really big parts of the church, but then they lost their faith. They don't even know what to do with it. And a large part of that is identity. Like they hold on to this image, this person, because it's difficult to leave your faith. Um, I
Well,
mean,
you lose a lot of things
personally,
with it.
well, you lose, and you lose the identity, and especially when everyone, like in my case, my family, I'm sure you go through this too. I think you've told me that you've gone through this, that you just recently went through this actually.
Yeah.
Um, but like with my family, they're very loving and kind, and they love me no matter what. Like that's just the case. But there is this constant, well, you're not Christian, so you're probably not going to end up okay. Or you're not Christian. Maybe that's pushing it too far if y'all are listening. Sorry. I don't mean it that way. But it's more like um, you're just still not Christian.
Yeah.
Like, you need a, like my mother was talking to me recently, like you need a ground for everything you do. You need something to come back to. And honestly, I think she's right, which I think should be which is important that we should talk about the good things that religion offer.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that it's all about identity, and people don't want to. And I also think it's about a lack of meaning, because if you don't have this idea of living for something greater than yourself, then what are you left with? Just mere quantum fields in a big void that means nothing, and you die and nothing else happens.
Yeah.
That's why people have this dichotomy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that there is a decline of religion, but there's probably an increase in this thing of spiritual. I'm spiritual, or I do. Like there's a lot of substitutions for it too.
Yeah. How do you combat that meaning part of it? Like,
I think that's
what is your process there?
like what's the meaning of life?
Yeah. Like,
I
what would
think
you
it's a
tell
bad
people?
question. I think it's a bad question. I think that and the reason is that like the lack of meaning we feel is really cultural specific.
Yeah.
So if you go to places in Tibet or other like in ancient China or even places in Japan, you ask what's the meaning of life. That is a completely literally, I know, but it's a meaningless question to them.
It does
We
make
ask
sense.
that question in the West because our religion is all about meaning. It's all
Hmm.
about a story. God made the world and he has a purpose for your life,
Hmm.
and it's all about you and your story. And God has all these plans. And when you go through hard times, make sure you believe in God. He'll pull you through it because it's a story. And then you ask, what's the meaning of life? Well, I know the meaning of life is to accept Christ into my heart and walk daily with Christ so I can be granted access into eternal paradise. And that to me is arguably one of the most terrible things we can tell children.
Hmm.
But I think we can go back. But back to the question, what I personally do with meaning, I think meaning, the question of meaning is completely created by thinking. It is
Hmm.
like dogs don't worry about what the meaning of life is. And are dogs really sad? No, they're swinging with it. They love it. They're in the moment. They're enjoying life.
Yeah.
I don't think life needs to have a meaning to be totally grounded in this moment, in this
Yeah.
present moment.
Yeah.
As long as we don't keep projecting into the future and worrying about the future and then mulling over the past, as long as being
Yeah.
completely in this present moment, there's no need for meaning. In fact,
Yeah.
I think meaninglessness, like the Chinese word zhiran, which is the word for nature, means purposeless. Or oh no, it's like
Pur-
yeah, purposelessness. I can never say that word. No, it
purposeless.
means that which emerges upon itself.
Uh,
Basically, spontaneity.
yeah.
There's no meaning. How do
Yeah.
you deal with it?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why I asked you, because I want people to hear that, and I think I knew kind of what you would say, but uh, it is a terrible question. You know, I think that, well, for one thing, if there is meaning, it is we give meaning. We give meaning to whatever it is.
Right.
And so I
Right.
think if you're gonna phrase it that way, beautiful. So what is your purpose? What is your meaning? Okay, you answer that question with your life. Your life is the answer. So, but that requires you to be present. That's not you waiting for something external to happen to see what the purpose in your life is. It's like you're giving purpose to everything you do. And I think, to me, that is so intuitive. And we've had this kind of conversation before. I think about, like, we named everything. You said this. You said this to me, and it blew my mind. And it's, we named everything, and we forgot we did it. Like
That's a
these
quote from Alan
things.
Watts.
Yeah. Well, I heard it from you first, so I'm going to attribute it to
I
you.
just got to give credit where
Yeah.
credit's
Yeah.
due.
Exactly. But these things didn't come to us and say, I'm a tree. These things didn't come to us and say, this is the meaning that this is the purpose that I serve. We went and found those things. We went and named these things. We went and discovered, okay, trees produce oxygen. They break down our carbon dioxide, and we have this synergistic relationship with them. And so we are placing all of these things that and words, and mapping them when it was not really ever necessary. It functions by itself, on its own, without us doing it, without us knowing the map.
Right.
And
Like what yeah.
go ahead.
Like one of my a Zen master friend of mine, his teacher would say, the sky never looked down on us and said, "Hey everyone, I'm blue."
Mhm.
And the trees never looked at us and said, "Hey y'all, we are trees." And grass never said, "I'm grass." We put that meaning, we put that name on it, and we get confused. We think that our symbols are reality itself. And I just did a video over the map and the territory
Mm.
about that. Where like we confuse a map of something with what it's supposed to represent, the real thing itself. Like there's two ways to experience a flower. We can just name it and say, "Oh, look at that flower, it's red," and then walk on. Or you can just see whatever it is. But
Mm.
it's not flower. Flower, that putting a concept over it steals its beauty. It steals its presence. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Once, yeah, it ceases to be it.
It ceases
Flower.
to be separate. Yeah.
Yeah.
It ceases to be, that's we'll go down another conversation. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Back
it's
up
a
the topic.
yeah, I know. We
We do
planned this
this.
one out to make it more on topic. Yeah.
We're
No,
doing
but
the jazz
but
thing
it
now.
is related. I think that yeah. But in terms of religion, you ask, like, so a lot of people I think are losing. They're not. People are actually now hurting for meaning. I hear a lot in this
Yeah.
culture. So, and I think that largely is due to a decline in religion and religious belief. So the question is this a good thing or a bad thing? Maybe we should talk about that, because there are negatives to losing church, and being disemboweled with all of that religiosity, community, and all that. So I thought maybe we could talk about what are some of the good things. At least I guess we'll stick to Christianity. What are some of the good things that Christianity has to offer us that we are losing with the decline of religion, with the decline of Christianity?
Yeah. Well, one thing that comes to mind first is faith, a mentality of "Thy will be done," right?
Yeah.
So a surrendering to whatever that will is, and for me, like my faith, what my surrendering is surrendering to whatever is. So there's, have you heard of J. Krishnamurti?
Of course.
Of course. He said when he's prompted, when he's asked, well, he says, "You want to know my secret? I don't mind what happens." And
Yeah.
that to me is the very definition of faith. This, "I don't mind what happens." That's the submission to "Thy will be done." Right.
Absolutely.
So that's the first thing that comes to mind is faith. What about you?
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, it's almost like the Christian. So I've always said this too, because the Christian idea of what they call faith is not faith at all.
Yeah.
It's, to me, it's clinging to an idea. It's hoping that my particular beliefs will come out true. And when you hold on to any idea, anything, it could be Islam, Buddha, whatever, it will help you in times of need. And so people take that and say, "Oh, see, my faith saw me through."
Mm.
But it's not faith, it's clinging. It's like falling off a precipice and there's rocks falling with us, and we're holding on to a boulder thinking that's going to save us, but it's falling too. So the attitude of faith, true faith, is letting go. And yeah, Krishnamurti, the reason I say course, because I have high regard for JT Krishnamurti. Yeah. And I think Eckhart Tolle said that quote once. He's like, he makes that quote, and that's where I've heard that
Reference.
before.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an attitude. "Thy will be done" is an attitude of being open and having faith in what is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that thing will let you down sometimes, and that's why people don't have a lot of faith in it, because people get brain tumors, people get cancer, and we get hit by cars.
Yeah.
And so, how can we have faith in what is when what is so clearly scary?
Yeah.
But it's really an attitude. It's not so much like
Well,
have faith. You don't need to have faith in something that's a story, because that story will crumble with other stories. But having faith in dying, it's like being willing to die.
yeah,
I mean, I know it sounds weird, but it's true.
yeah. Well,
Yeah. Anyway,
it's exactly, I mean, we've said it a few times. It's a surrender. Whether whatever
surrender. Yeah.
happens to you is bad, or you perceive it as bad, it is simply a happening. It's like you're not the victim of it. It is a happening. It
Right.
is just life. It is the experience. And if you want to be a part of it, there is pain. There's not necessarily suffering, but there is pain. You don't have to suffer, but you have these pain receptors, so that's going to be part of your experience, regardless of.
And you are finite. You are going
Yeah,
to die,
exactly.
and it can be very horrible, and it can be very sudden.
Yeah.
So I think that's why people lose faith
Hmm.
in the way things are. Actually, one of my favorite lines from the Tao Te Ching is like, have faith in the way things are.
Hmm.
Perfect. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Have faith in the way things are.
Yeah.
Because what's funny is everybody thinks, or not everyone, but a lot of people are always surprised when things happen.
Hmm.
It's like, well, what did you expect? Like you do, like I was thinking the other day, I was like having all these problems. I had this giant to-do list. Like today, I didn't get through all these things I wanted to do on my to-do list. I'm just sitting there frustrated. And then like this problem came up and that problem came up. And I'm like, man, I'm just all these problems. And then I'm like, well, what the hell did I expect? Did I expect there to be, do I expect there to be some point when there are no problems? Like when there are no struggles?
Yeah.
It's totally an attitude of swimming against the river of life, trying to control and put things in order. And it may work a little bit, but it doesn't work in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree. I think Christianity, the attitude of faith, is one of the best doctrines, I think. But more so, thy will be done, not faith in hopefully I go to heaven, not hell kind of thing, but more, whatever's happening, it's God's will. I leave it up to God. It's not my will. It's total release from control. That is a source of psychological relief.
Yeah. There was something that I would say to, like when I was like adamantly Christian, and I mean even now, it's still an opinion that I hold, is um this faith that we talk about when you're in Christianity is, when it's attacked and you wouldn't feel the need to be defensive and combative about it. I was of the opinion that if that's your reaction, then you have little faith. Like if it is
Hmm.
surrender to your beliefs, then you have that reaction to other people or things that occur, then your faith is, I mean, it's little, or if any, so that's a side tangent, but
No, that's interesting. Yeah. I think a lot of Christians would love to hear you say that in their church,
I
because that's like I mean, because
I don't know if it'll be received
like
well.
that's no, I think that it would be like, why are you fighting? Like when somebody says they don't believe, don't why do you have to get defensive? What's that about? Don't, oh ye of little faith.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Yeah, full faith. Yeah, absolutely. All right,
All
so
right.
what I do want to talk about community being
Yeah,
another, I
that's
think
the
that
one.
now this one to me is the heavy hitter, in terms of what we lose with the decline of religion. I think that a sense of community is clearly, I mean, very important for human beings. Like
Yeah,
feeling like you're part of a group, you're part of a family, you got people who can look after you. You're going out of town, you got somebody who's going to watch your cat. You're going through hard times, somebody will take you in. I heard a story recently about a family that their whole house burned down,
yeah,
and they go to a church, and in an hour they had people offer their entire home to them and let them stay as long as they needed. And that is extraordinarily important, and that to me is probably the worst thing that happens with the decline of religion and
Yeah.
church.
Yeah. Yeah. There was in that conversation with how earlier I said about the guy was kind of an evangelist. That's something that he brought up was like the good that has happened in his life, these blessings bestowed upon him, and he would describe all these things that he has all these connections, he's had all these opportunities, and I looked and I was like, couldn't couldn't you chalk that up to you have a community? Like, is that possible? Because what in my experience, if I am talking to like a Christian friend, or somebody in the church, and I explain to them that I'm not a Christian and why, and I tell them all of these things. It's like I very often I won't receive the same treatment that I once did when I subscribed to that. So, and I think that is sad. I think that frankly is very unfortunate that that so often happens. I mean, I still have friends who know that do support me and whatever else, but there is this, um, yeah, communal like confirmation bias of the blessings that God bestows upon you, but also I'm of the opinion that it could also just be the fact that you are in a community, very close knit, tight community, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that it could be that, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could be. It's not. Yeah, he's maybe confusing the benefits of community with divine intervention.
Yeah.
However, though, I still think though that it's community is just extremely important,
Oh
extremely
yeah.
important. And a lot of our culture is based on going to church, going and seeing whoever that you know, and the other thing, it's also, I think, not just a community just for community's sake. Like there's also bad community.
Yeah.
Like, well, I won't get political, but there are also bad communities,
Mm.
and um, so, but a church is not just any ordinary community. It's a community dedicated to being a better person.
Mhm.
It's a community dedicated to living for something better than yourself.
Sometimes.
Something that is sometimes.
Sometimes.
I mean, but generally the idea, like from most churches I've been to, even though the rhetoric is highly political
Yeah.
and it's highly judgmental, they still. I mean, I will say, like most Christians, like at a church, are really kind
Mhm.
when I go there.
Absolutely.
They're very welcoming because they feel that it is they're, I don't know, maybe the people have different ideas, but that is kind of a duty at a church to be a kind person. This is what we're about. We want to show the world that there is love through Jesus Christ. And how do we do that when we're scoffing at people and being angry? So I think that the idea of coming together for a common good, a common moral good and grounding that people can hang on to,
Mhm.
that is extraordinarily important.
Yeah.
And without church, there really isn't anywhere else for that. And I do think that will be a big problem.
Yeah.
And I think there are solutions to that
Yeah.
too.
Well, and if they don't, it's almost like there's no just like secularist community in that way. But you see a lot of other spiritual gatherings. I mean, you have festivals like Burning Man and things where these people become very close knit and um, have these ceremonies. Essentially, but it is also kind of a jumping from one thing to another, and but
It may not be the healthiest either.
yeah, and I don't think so, but it depends.
I mean, that's up to it's
Yeah,
up to you, I
it
guess. But
depends.
yeah, you're right. Like there are like a lot of spiritual. There's a lot of other alternatives. Like I used to live at this temple,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it was quite cultish. And I hear now, I just heard a friend who still is involved in some way there. Then she's like, yeah, it's bad. Like the guru guy is like having sex with the students, and yeah, it's bad. Uh, Hopefully none of them see this because I'm outing him right now. He's a POS, but and
Damn.
teaching him like weird, like but it's all like spiritual. And there's a community aspect of church that's very people oriented. It's not so like, oh, we must worship this guy who, nobody really worships the pastor. Maybe sometimes they do, but church has a really good uh, model. Like, you go in, it's all friendly, you sing, and it's this amazing release of emotion and problems throughout the whole
Yeah.
week. And it's all about, and of course, it's anchored to your deepest beliefs, or even if you don't believe, and you feel everyone else in the crowd doing this, and they're all like into it, they're raising their hands, it's all about Jesus, and you're like, well, maybe Jesus is true. And like it's totally understandable why people go to church and say, wow, that was a remarkable experience, because there really is nothing like that anywhere else. I mean, so that to me is one of the tragedies of the decline of religion, is that, certainly. So is the decline of a beautiful community, because what we have now is not really that. We have a lot of bickering and fighting. Honestly, the church fights too. So
Yeah.
I don't know really the solution.
Yeah.
I don't know the solution to that. But anyway, that's definitely a good that religion has.
Yeah.
Are there any other? What do you have anything else to say about that?
What was I gonna?
I'm curious if there's like, "Thy will be done" is an amazing doctrine. It's really helpful doctrine. Living for something greater than yourself is also a really good thing.
Yeah.
I think that
Oh, higher. Yeah, some sort of
constantly,
higher power. Yeah, like
right, like
having something that
having,
is greater than you
right,
mentality. Yeah.
like being constantly thinking that your life is so important. Like,
Yeah.
well, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but more like my individual problems are the most important problems.
Yeah.
Or, believing in God is a lot more helpful in that sense, where it's like, well, all my problems have a meaning, or they're not all that big a deal, because I'm going to go to heaven, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's not self-centric, is,
yeah,
I think, the point. So when you have, so it's kind of difficult sometimes, like when we talk about surrendering to what is, that which is, that's kind of difficult. It's a lot easier, I think, for people to surrender to something greater than them. Not that what is not greater than us, but it is not very tangible. It's a surrender to the way that things are. And a lot of people have a hard time with that, because we'd like to have an idyllic, like something idealized, perfect, and powerful, that is in
the
control.
concept,
Yeah, some kind of omniscience about it. And it's
otherworldly.
comforting. It's comforting, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
But then, yeah. So that's a good question though. Is losing that a bad thing?
I think facing and meditating on the surrendering to what is, I think that is just something that they don't generally turn to right after, because they don't have anybody telling them that. That's not part of their vernacular. They're just trying to deconstruct what they know. And I think that is immensely important, to be able to be exposed to that and meditate on it, and come to a point of surrendering and letting go to what is and the way things are. So but I just don't see that as something that is in common language. There's no layman's conversations surrounding that concept. So yeah, I think it is important to move from that. I just think it's hard if you're not exposed to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard it's
Yeah.
hard in and of itself, but it is especially hard if you never heard of it before.
That's yeah, I completely agree with that. Which I think kind of leads into maybe the last point we should talk about, which is it what I don't think it's necessary to talk about what are the bad things of religion,
Yeah.
but more so what are the implications that are maybe a good thing for. Now this may be a highly contentious topic, but what is the good about people becoming more secular? Because actually, I don't even think that that's what's happening. I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people are they're trading traditional religion with astrology and other baseless beliefs
Yep.
like crystals, chakras, and things that don't have a empirical basis.
Yep.
So that's one thing. So that's actually a tricky thing to ask, isn't it? Because if I were to ask, well, why is it a good thing or a bad thing that religion, like what are the good reasons that religion is dying? Well, it's because people are becoming more secular, but is that really true? A lot of people
Yep.
are changing for one one
Yeah.
spiritual thing for another,
Looking for an
and
alternative. Yeah.
looking for an alternative. It's
Yeah.
kind of the same dogmatic issue, or even politically, people start they leave religion and become really deep into their wokeism, their woke politics, that whole basically it's a religion. And same with, and even on the right, you find that on the right as well.
Yeah.
With this I would call it, well, it's been called Trumpistan. People who no, people who, it's not just about him as a president, but they freaking love the man like he is Jesus' second coming.
Yeah.
Which is very strange.
Like he
I mean,
could
they're
do no
willing to.
wrong. Like none.
Oh, the guy, and apparently he's Christian too.
Yeah.
But there's people still have this underlying dogmatic tendency. So I'm not so sure that the decline of church is necessarily a good thing, because it's being traded off with other
Yeah.
things that aren't based in empiricism.
Yeah.
Now, to make one more point there, is that I think that it is a good thing. It would be a wonderful thing if we started trading religious, dogmatic, and baseless beliefs for things that are empirically and empirically shown and are repeatable.
Yeah.
So like, people, you can even, now there's Flat Earth Society and it's growing, right?
Yeah.
Like, but that has zero, a lot of flat earthers, if you want to debate, let's do it. But
Yeah.
that has zero base in reality. That is totally against the evidence, like 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So if removing oneself from a dogmatic belief to a secular attitude, to one that only comports their beliefs based on the evidence, as Carl Sagan says, that, or actually this is what David Hume says, that is what I would think would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Because, well, what do you think about that? I don't want to give
Oh
you
no,
too much.
I agree. I think it's the fact that you can radicalize anything. It doesn't matter what it is. It's not specific to any religion. It is this way of thinking, this level of consciousness that we find a lot of people in, and this basically a sense of a holier than thou sense. I could do no wrong because I believe this, and it sometimes runs deeply into religion, and sometimes it's as surface level as color of your hair and eyes. I mean, you have a whole catastrophic event that a whole period of time, whole group of people who there's still some of that left, unfortunately, but there anything can be radicalized, and it is that form of thinking. It is the dogmatic thinking that results within that um, in
Oh, it's like
genocide and
the root cause
yeah,
is dogma.
yeah,
So it's not even so much religion.
no,
It's not even so much that religion's the issue. It's I've always said this, like it's just dogmatic belief. So
yeah,
to me, I specifically mean by dogma, like I say that it's collective belief with of something that has no basis in empiricism. So
yeah,
it's just a collective belief that has no reason to believe. So I wouldn't call like the belief that the earth is round a dogma,
no.
because nobody's getting behind it and dying for it. Or,
Well,
you know, well, maybe,
I mean,
maybe they will.
Copernicus
Maybe there
didn't he
will be
die?
some.
Got-
Well, he didn't.
or
He
is it
died.
heliocentrism?
He didn't release his heliocentric model until after he died, I think. Or
Oh,
he,
well,
yeah, because
who
he
went
was
on
threatened or
trial for
something.
who went on trial and drank poison?
Galileo.
Okay, did he was
Oh,
killed?
well, you're thinking of Socrates.
Well,
Socrates drank hemlock,
I,
and because he was corrupting the youth
yeah, which didn't have, yeah, that
with
didn't have
his
anything to do with
thinking. You stop thinking,
the
guys.
solar system or anything. Yeah, but
No, so Galileo was shown the instruments of torture and was put on house arrest. And he
okay,
famously had, with his telescope, he had, I think it was like a church bishop or somebody, like say, look, you can see what I'm talking about right here. Look at the moon. It's not a disc. And they refused to even look at it. They're like, no, no.
yeah, you're a
And he
demon.
got away. He was lucky. Right. Copernicus I think Copernicus, I don't know exactly what it went through, but I think he died, and then his work wasn't released until later, and
Okay,
because it would have
they would have
freaking
killed
killed
him.
him. But either way, it's dogma.
Yeah,
Dogma is the root of all these issues, and dogma is the root of all these political movements too.
yeah,
Dogma is the root of flat Earth, and it's the root of the deranged woke crowd and the Trumpistan.
yeah,
It's it's belief without justification.
yeah,
And that's the real thing we need to remove from. So it's not that the decline of religion isn't necessarily a good thing, as long as you're just switching it for something else. You're
yeah,
just replacing it with some other dogmatic belief. It's the best is because if we don't base our minds on empiricism, then we're going to base our laws off of religious belief, and that's not a good thing.
yeah,
Like stem cell research to me is an uncontroversial topic, but it's so controversial because people have a belief in a soul,
yeah,
and there's no evidence for souls.
yeah,
And saying you can even talk about abortion, but we don't need to talk about that now.
yeah.
But which I'm not taking a position on abortion.
Well, there's also, I forget what country it is, but they're talking about taking people's DNA to basically, I think, clone them. I mean, it just talks about harvesting organs for future donating, or like if they ever needed a donor.
That sounds like that movie, The Island. You
I've
ever
never
seen
seen
that
it.
movie?
No, no.
It's exactly that. They cloned people, but they like put them in a institution like they're clones, and they had a
Yeah.
life. And then if they needed an organ, they'd kill them and take
Mm,
the organs. Anyway, crazy.
yeah.
Well, what else should we talk about?
Well,
Do you think we hit all
I
all the
mean,
topics?
we're reaching an hour, so we should probably close it up here soon. So
Sure.
I mean, I guess that covers all the topics. Yeah, because we talked about what does it get right, or what's good.
Right.
Which I think those two, because I had both those down. So I think those two are pretty much synonymous with each
Yeah.
other.
I mean, this is an incredibly interesting time we live in,
Yeah.
and the decline of religion. Like I know a lot of atheists will be like, "Yay, this is a good thing." I'm not so sure it's such a good thing because I don't know if we're actually having a decline in the thing that we actually want to be in decline, which is
Yeah.
dogma. And it seems like in our country, particularly, we are on the rise of dogmatic thinking, and So yeah, I mean, anyway, maybe we can have a conversation soon about why people believe and like the arguments for the existence of God, and why is it actually more reasonable not to believe in God
Yeah.
in the name of reason and logic, not just like I have people to like, well, one particular family member is like, well, you think you just know everything, right? I'm like, no, it's not about that. There's
It's
good
that I don't know.
methods to coming to knowledge, right? Yeah, no, I don't know. That's the thing. I start with don't know. I don't know anything, and neither do you. That's my point. You don't
Yeah.
know either.
But you're starting
You
with,
don't know, but you're saying you know, and that's the problem. Or you're saying you believe and act like you know. The problem
Yeah.
is like there are good ways of coming to conclusions about truth, and there are bad ways, and we know that they're good and bad because
Yeah.
of what it does for us. Anyway,
Yeah.
here I go on
Well,
a
and if you
freaking
can
tangent.
differentiate between, I simply believe this, but it's not something that I know, which I believe, to me, is faith. It's not
Right.
subject to knowledge. That's
Mhm.
okay. Like you know,
Yeah,
I'll grant
but
that. That's
don't teach it
wonderful.
to children as truth.
Yeah. That's a wonderful thing to me, and but the assertion that this is the truth, and I know it to be the truth because this says it's the truth, and going through this circular. I mean, and there's always this claim to evidence, but it's always the circular argument, and it's very hard to show somebody that and why it's circular and why it's not a solid foundation. And it's like I get I don't want to take away your beliefs, but I want you to see that it is belief, right? I want you to see that it is not certain. It is just what you believe. But I don't know. I digress.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's a difference, like in philosophy. That's literally why I'm doing this channel right now. This series on epistemology, which is what is knowledge. That's the whole
Yep.
question. What is knowledge? And of course, there's a difference between believing in something. Well, all of knowledge essentially is a belief. There is, because the definition of knowledge is justified true belief. But a lot of people
Hmm.
just have that belief bit and forget the justification and the truth part. They just
Yep.
they just have the belief and not the justification and the truth. And that's where science is. It's what science does. So anyway, we can save that for another time. It was wonderful talking to you again.
Oh,
I always
anytime.
love these conversations. So
Likewise.
yeah, we'll take it easy. I'll see you
You
soon. Yeah.
too. Sounds good.
All right, brother. Later.